Dr. Eschen, thank you so much indeed for your time. If you don't mind, in as brief a manner as possible, just explain the study's methodology. I mean, how did you come up with the figure of $3.66 trillion, and how were you able to collate so much information?
Yeah, thank you. So we did a study of the literature looking at reported impacts of alien invasive species in Africa. And we then realized that maybe this wasn't enough. So we also conducted a questionnaire survey among experts in Africa or people who have worked on invasive species in Africa. And then we calculated the impacts for a known area, say a square kilometer. And then we used other available information to upscale the information to a country and a continent level.
And did you find that there was a certain amount of inaction by the authorities, or that actually Africa will have to live with these invasive species because they can't be gotten rid of?
Well, that's not really the purpose of our study, but we didn't look at the actual actions or inactions. We looked at the impacts, and we came to the conclusion that it would be necessary for authorities and research institutes to look at potential solutions, including limiting the establishment of new species, but also finding cost-effective solutions for species that are already present at the moment.
Right, okay, so you weren't necessarily making the recommendations in your report, but you want to pass it on to people who can actually do something. So does that mean that you didn't actually look at what action is even being taken now against invasive species? You literally just wanted to collect the data?
Exactly. The aim of our study was to make an estimate of the current costs. And the reason for that is that we know that these species have large impacts, but as long as you don't know what the extent of the impact is, it's very difficult to convince decision makers to take action and to implement better policies, for example.
Okay, were you able to discover where the invasive species came from? I mean, these ones that we particularly highlighted in your report as being the most damaging, the ones that can destroy entire harvests?
So we looked at species that come from outside the African continent, which have been introduced either intentionally or unintentionally. And especially those who have been introduced unintentionally, they tend to come with the trade, for example, as contaminants or stowaways in traded goods.
Okay, you are hinting that the findings will go beyond the science, beyond the invasive species, because again, that bit that we highlighted there, when we talk about having to remove weeds from the crops, and that a lot of that work is unpaid work and that it's done by women. So that's a social issue. But it's extremely important, isn't it, in terms of when you're counting the cost of the invasive species, because as your report rightly says, it's not just about the crops, it's about the work that's done to protect the crops.
Absolutely. So what this study highlights is that the costs are enormous, and the vast majority of the costs that we estimated are actually not paid at wages. They are, as you said, weeding costs, which is being done largely by women and children. And so the fact that they have to deal with these invasive species takes up a lot of their time, which they could spend on something else, such as taking care of their families, going to school, or developing other economic activities.
Dr. Rene Eschen, thank you so much indeed for sharing your findings with us on TRT World.